Jerry Tarkanian, Siegfried and Roy, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, Wayne Newton, David Copperfield, Lance Burton, Sammy Davis Jr., Mike Tyson. Names synonymous with Vegas greatness, all left their mark on that sleepy little town out west, and we wanted to join their list. Mount Rushmore in neon lights. Now, growing up in Las Vegas, there are a few ways that you can make a name for yourself. You can strike it rich gambling, you can get a big show, or as someone who grows up in the city, there was one way that you could for sure write your name in the history books of your city. The senior prom. Oh yes, the senior prom is a big deal in the desert. People plan their senior proms for years. Jackie, is Jackie in here? She grew up in Las Vegas. I don't know if they did senior proms at Valley High School where she went, or if they just had work release there. But at my school, the senior prom was a huge deal. Now, there are a few things that you had to do in order to ensure that you had a successful senior prom in Las Vegas. The first was the way that you dressed. For guys, it was black tie formal. Only a tuxedo would do. For girls, a full-length formal gown. The second thing that you had to do was dinner. And this was dinner at a high-caliber black-tie gourmet restaurant. This wasn't dinner at Applebee's or Outback Steakhouse. The third was the dance. This was merely a formality. You would show up, take some pictures, have a cup of punch, maybe dance once or twice, and then you were off to a show. A Vegas headlining show. Then after that, the after party. A good after party took place at someone's house. A great after party took place at a hotel. An epic after party took place in a suite. Me and my friends had planned our senior prom for months. The guys took the lead on this. The girls were just along for the ride. But the first thing that I needed was a date. And I didn't have one. Because you see, with just a few weeks left before we would graduate, I only had eyes on one girl, Heather. Heather was the envy of every girl in our school, and Heather was the desire of every guy in our school. The problem is that Heather didn't date high school guys. They were too immature. She only dated sophisticated, more mature college guys. But word had gotten around over the weekend that Heather had broken up with her college boyfriend. And she was available. Now, Heather's locker was right next to mine in the locker hallway. And so I spent all weekend writing my script, practicing it in front of the full-length mirror, and on Monday I had plans that I was going to meet her in the hallway in between second and third period at our lockers, and I was going to ask her to go to prom with me. And I saw her there as I began my walk down the hallway in between the periods. I walked right up to her, opened my locker, turned, got a whiff of that hair, shut my locker, and walked to class. Tuesday, the same thing. Wednesday, the same thing. Finally, I was running out of time. On Thursday, I said, it's now or never. 30 seconds of extreme courage. And I walked up to her in the hallway. I opened my locker. I pretended to be putting books into my bag. And I looked over and I said, Heather, I was just wondering, Heather, Heather? She closed her locker, she looked over at me and she said, Tony Marr. I couldn't believe she knew my name. Tony Marr, are you asking me out on a date? Now, you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. But in that very moment, every door in my school opened, and every student, faculty member, and staff flooded around our lockers to gaze and stare and point at my impending doom. I looked at her, summoned up every bit of courage that I had left in my body. What? Would you go to prom? What? Would you go to prom entire school gasped. They couldn't believe what they just heard. It went out over the loudspeaker to the entire school. Heather, that beautiful, sweet soul, she leaned over and kissed me on my cheek. She said, Tony, I'd love to. Now, you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you, but I was there. Fireworks went off in the halls of my school at that exact moment. Fireworks all over, oohs and ahs let out from everyone around, and I suddenly was flooded with these memories and visions of the future, of little Tonys and Heathers running around the Christmas tree. We began to make the final plans and preparations for the senior prom. Me and my 6 best friends. Now Ryan was the only one who didn't have a date. The rest of us all had dates. We went together and we got tuxedos, matching tuxedos, top of the line matching tuxedos. We went to Foot Locker and we got matching black high top Chuck Taylor Converse sneakers. And to top it all off, we got black matching Chicago White Sox Pro Fit baseball caps. We looked good. Prom night came around. I was all fixed up with my shoes tied tight, my tie just right, and my baseball cap, the brim snapped tight. I pulled up to Heather's house. I walked up to the door. I knocked on her door. The door opened, and there she stood in the most beautiful, full-length red silk dress that I had ever seen in my life, and I drooled all over my brand new Chuck Taylors. Step 1, complete. Step 2, we were off to dinner. Now, this was my job. Everyone left the reservations up to me, and I got us reservations at Kiefer's atop the carriage house. It was black tie formal, and I had a coupon. Oh yeah, you remember the entertainment book? Did they have the entertainment book here where you had the coupons all in the back, but then at the front you had a punch card for gourmet restaurants, buy one, get one free, and Kiefer's was in that. The rest of my friends didn't know that, but I had the punch card. I sat Heather down, pulled the chair out, laid the napkin in her lap. The waiter came around and did the same for me. They handed us a menu that had no numbers next to the items. Now, this was different than any menu I'd seen before. This was the first time I'd been handed a menu that had linen paper, leather bound on the back. It didn't have ketchup or mustard stains all over it. I wasn't quite sure what to do. And all of the words in there, without numbers next to them, were in a different language that I couldn't understand. The waiter explained to us all what was on the menu for the evening. We ordered, and dinner was fabulous. That wasn't until Jason began to kick me under the table. What are you doing? I need to see you in the bathroom. Jason, that's breaking man. I need to see you in the bathroom. All right, so I got up and walked into the men's bathroom with my best friend Jason. I said, what's going on? He said, you're not going to believe this. I've lost my wallet. Now, this was long before the days that you would ever give a high school kid, a credit card. Cell phones hadn't been invented yet. We had car phones that would, couldn't carry into a restaurant with you, and well, we were out of luck. So we had a decision to make. I peeked my head out of the bathroom and motioned for the rest of the guys to come inside, and they all looked at me confusingly, but they came inside. We had a motto. We were big fans of the Three Musketeers, and so we would put our hands up and say, all for one and one for all. Go team! And we had a decision to make there in the men's bathroom of Kiefer's atop the carriage house. We could either leave Jason to fend for himself and wash dishes, or we could all pitch in and help him out. Well, all for one, one for all. We decided we would pitch in, take our spare money, and help him out. But dinner, well, let's just say it hadn't gone quite as well as we had hoped. Next step was the dance. Again, merely a formality. We were there mainly to take pictures. Only Heather got upset because I was wearing a baseball cap, and she said she didn't want to be looking at the pictures with her kids in the future of her senior prom and see her date having a baseball cap. Well, I was offended because she didn't say our kids when she was showing our kids the pictures. And I said, when we're showing our kids the pictures, I don't want to have hat head. I'm keeping the cap on. That caused a big fight, and we didn't even get a dance. This night was not going so well. But it's okay, because next was the show. Now, if you've ever been to Vegas, you know that there are headlining acts at every hotel and casino all up and down the Las Vegas Strip. You could spend a lot of money and go to a Cirque du Soleil show. You could go see Wayne Newton. You could go see David Copperfield and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars. But I was a high school kid. I didn't have that kind of money. You could go the other end and go to like the Tropicana or the Imperial Palace and see Vegas stars on ice. And we didn't want to do anything like that either, because we were trying to make history this night. So we got tickets to go to the Mirage and see Andrew Lloyd Webber's Starlight Express. Now, Andrew Lloyd Webber has brought us some of the greatest musical numbers of our decade, of our lifetime, classics such as Cats, Phantom of the Opera, Jesus Christ Superstar. Starlight Express is not one of those. Starlight Express is the story of two locomotives that sing and fall in love. Clive and Sam would probably love it, but for us, it was awful. It was basically Casablanca meets roller derby. It was a mess. We left early. This prom night was falling apart. But there was still hope. The after party. And the after party was where we would make our mark. The after party is where we would join that league of names, that Mount Rushmore in neon lights. That after party is where we would write our names in the history books of our city. Because you see, it was a few years earlier that my friends and I had stumbled upon access to the highest tower of the New York Hotel and Casino. You had to make your way into the visiting guests lobby area, sneak into a guest hotel, go all the way to the top floor, get out, make your way to the right. There was a stairwell, a service stairwell, that you would go up another flight of stairs, make your way to the left, where there was a door with a crash bar. You would open the crash bar and you would be out on the rooftop of the Empire State Building. The rooftop was covered in gravel. About a 3-foot wall surrounded the perimeter, and other than a few electrical boxes and AC units, it was wide open space. We loved it up there. My friends and I would go up there and spend hours up there. We had a couple of lawn chairs that we stashed under a couple of AC units that we could go up and sit, the kind with the long tubular strips of plastic that would pinch any exposed area of skin like an angry crab. We would sit up there and gaze out over the endless lights of our city. We would talk about life. We would talk about girls. We would talk about faith. We would talk about where we were going to college and what our future plans were. We'd sworn an oath never to share this sacred space with anyone. But we were seniors now. In a few weeks, we'd be graduating. In a few months, we'd be making our way to all different parts of the country. So we figured an after party for our senior prom would be the perfect place to pass on this legacy to the next generation. We'd handed out flyers for weeks. And now we moved into the lobby of the New York Hotel and Casino like the Rat Pack. I didn't have a date anymore, but I didn't care. There was a pep in my step as I knew that I was about to make history. We had everything that we would need to ensure the greatest after party in Las Vegas history in 2 suitcases on rollers. We had gourmet refreshments. Snack cookies. The generic kind where one side's chocolate, one side's vanilla. We had cookie wafers. Again, that generic variety pack where there's chocolate, vanilla, and then whatever that pink flavor is. No one really knows what the pink flavor is. Some would say it's strawberry. I don't think it's strawberry. It might be strawberry, but I don't think it's strawberry. We had paper plates, we had napkins, we had little Dixie cups, and we had Lariat. Dr. Lariat. Dr. Lariat is the Albertsons knockoff brand of Dr. Pepper. Now, Lariat can only be found in Dr. Pepper grocery stores, and Lariat does not come in a 1-liter bottle. No, Lariat doesn't come in a 2-liter bottle. Lariat can only be found in a 3-liter bottle of glorious soda refreshment. 3 liters for 69 cents, and we bought 3 of them. We pulled those suitcases into the guest elevator, made our way to the top floor, went to the right to the end, up the service hallway, down through the crash bar, opened it up where the lights of the city spread out before us. We laid our arms on that wall and gazed out over the city lights. The sounds of taxis and tourists on the city below created this harmonious melody that was the perfect backdrop for this night of nights. We had a battery-powered boombox with a microphone and a CD player, and since Ryan didn't have a date, he volunteered to be our DJ. Everything was set up immaculately. The music was blaring, and the music created this beautiful symphony with the sights and the sounds of the city below. The doors opened, and the first of our party-goers and friends walked out into our sacred space with looks of astonishment and wonderment on their faces. Everything was magical. The lariat was flowing freely, and in a miracle reminiscent of Jesus turning water into wine, those 3 liters never seemed to run dry. I glanced across the rooftop and I saw her. You couldn't miss her. Her red dress flowing in the breeze. Heather had come. Our eyes met across the gravel rooftop. She walked up to me and she asked me if I wanted to dance. I went over to Ryan, whispered into his ear. I said, "Why don't you slow this down a little bit for us?" And I gave him a recommendation. I pulled Heather close to me. All the cares of life began to slip away as my hands slowly slid down her side. Never seen you looking so lovely as you did tonight. I've never seen you shine so bright. You were amazing. I've never seen so many men ask you if you wanted to dance. Looking for a little romance. If I had the chance. I've never seen that dress you're wearing, or those highlights in your hair that match your eyes. I have been blind, lady. Freeze! The door to the rooftop burst open as officers fully outfitted in riot gear burst onto the scene with guns drawn. "Everybody down!" they shouted. The rooftop was sent into a state of mass hysteria. People were running, diving, screaming, sliding behind things. All I watched as one of my friends jumped off the rooftop in a valiant attempted escape. The place was sent into mass hysteria. A helicopter arose from the side of the building as more and more officers began to rappel down onto the rooftop below. I surveyed the frantic scene and I watched in horror as an officer lifted his nightstick high above his head and brought it down with a thundering jolt onto the refreshment table. I watched in horror and agony as a 3-liter unopened bottle of lariat soared through the air, cap coming off. It fell on the ground, spilling its liquid heaven onto the strip below. "Not the lariat!" I screamed in slow motion as I watched this horror unfold. I snapped back into reality and realized that a plan needed to be made. I made a motion for all of my friends to meet me behind an AC unit, and I ran across the gravel attack zone, sliding like a person safe into home plate behind the AC unit into the clutches of my friends. They all stared at me to be their leader with looks of horror and agony on their faces. Just as I was about to give a speech that would inspire the cause of freedom in all of us, a canister of tear gas came rolling behind the AC unit. "Every man for themselves!" is all that I could scream as I hastily made my way across the gravel. And then I saw my chance. The door to the rooftop had been jarred open. When the SWAT team had come through, it didn't fully shut. That was my opportunity. I made a dash for those flickering lights of freedom. I slid through the door into the bright blinding lights of the hallway, made my way down to the left of the hallway, down the service stairway, into the elevator, and as the door shut behind me, I patiently waited as we made our way down to the lobby below. The elevator doors opened. I flipped the collar on my tuxedo, blended into the crowd of tourists, made my way through the hotel lobby and out onto the strip. I went to our favorite place, out in front of the New York Hotel and Casino, where the Statue of Liberty stood tall and her fountains were flowing in front of me. I laid my arms on the iron railings, All of the tourists gathering around were pointing up to the ceiling, gazing in astonishment at the chaos taking place right above us. With all of the commotion, I don't think that anyone really noticed the steady stream of cola trickling down the side of the building. One by one, all my friends made their way out. One by one, they met me there at the fountains. Heather, all of my friends, and their dates. No one said a word as Lady Liberty towered over us. We didn't have to. We didn't make history that night. No one would write our names in the history books of our city. One by one that evening, we each left. And over the course of the next couple of weeks and months, one by one, we would all leave and go our separate directions. Jason went off to Texas. Ben went to Maryland. Jeremy went to Arizona. Heather went and became a big movie star in California. Each of us, one by one, left Las Vegas. And while our paths would never be together in a place like that again, while the world wouldn't celebrate our stories as the greatest prom goers in Vegas history, for that night, we were all living Las Vegas. Thank you guys so much.